everybody, this is Rustin Rose with Metalholic Magazine and Access.com, and with us today, the man, the myth, the legend, Mike Dean of Corrosion of Conformity. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I am doing phenomenal. You guys have a fantastic new album coming out here next week, 9. We're just calling it 9. So,
yeah.
And I want to talk about the new album, but first, I was talking to Reed when the last album came out, and we were sort of marveling over 30 years of COC as a band, and I'd sort of love to get your perspective on over 3 decades of COC, what stands out for you, because so much has changed in the music industry. We've all grown as people, yet COC, now so more than ever, is still this simple, raucous rock and roll machine. I sort of once likened you guys to America's version of Motorhead. You just keep it simple and you rock and roll.
Well, yeah, you know, time will get away from you, man, if you let it, which is a good thing. I mean, you worry about the years going by and all that, but I mean, it signifies survival, so I'll take it. You know, a lot of things change. I think we try to our first and foremost strategy, if we have any type of calculated overall, branding idea, which I don't think we really do, but is just basically to approach it as being influenced by things that are so far out of style that we can never be mistaken for something that's in style, and therefore we're just not really subject to, the usual rules of taste and all that. It's just about trying to exist outside of those expectations and do what we want to do.
Well, that's one of the things I love about Corrosion of Conformity. It's like, it doesn't matter what, I hate labels and stuff, but what subgenre you guys sort of dabble in, because you sort of get to a little bit of so many things, but it still always sounds like COC, no matter what it is, no matter who's singing, and that's always really impressed me.
I think it's a tough trick to do, but we just kind of stumble into that effect. Thank you very much, but yeah, I think there's some real disparate material over the years, and actually there's disparate material within the individual song. but the personalities of the players, especially the ones who've remained fairly constant through the various lineups and the numerous years, I think that does make it so that the same band that played Stare Too Long is in some respects sounding like the same band that played Intervention in 1985.
So now, before we jump into the new album here, can you take us back and share a memory or two, a bit of trivia, because fans all love that, myself included, of making that very first album, Eye for an Eye, 3 decades ago?
Oh my God! Yeah, I'm not a big fan. I think it's a little. I think it's kind of like the effect. It's kind of like the feeling you might have if I asked you about your like a yearbook picture or something like that. It's kind of kid stuff with a little bit of showing promise, and there's a couple killer things on there. I would say basically what I remember is meeting some interesting people that had a studio in their family room of their house in Raleigh, and big old 24-track machine, and some accoutrements of making records, and that they gave us a deal on running through it. So we put together all our super hardcore punk material and went in there, and since we were ages 15 through 19 at that time, we knew everything about how to make records, even though we never made one before. So I can only think that we must have been a real pain in the ass. And David Schmidt, if you're out there listening, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry I made you do multiple overdubs of bass, have multiple tracks of bass in the mix just because we could. I'm sorry we tried that. To be fair, Eye for an Eye, we were so unhappy with the guitar sound, they actually decided they would make it right, and they came back for more punishment. They decided they would make it right and give us some free time towards Animosity. So one side of Animosity is recorded at the same place, and the other side was recorded in North Hollywood, California, with the incomparable Bill Metoyer.
Nice, and here we are 30 years later, the 9th album, simply titled 9. You've never numbered an album before. Why suddenly 9?
Well, graphically, we had a couple other title ideas, but the way the songs were falling together, just there was no real central theme we can encompass for the title. And we looked at, like, naming it after individual songs, but when we did that, that really didn't group it together for us. So at the 11th hour, we liked the visual graphic impact of the Roman numerals 9, like IX. It looks cool. And then, of course, once we settled on the chorus, I noticed that the graphic influence of Down may have been upon us, being as we're talking about Down 4, Volume 2, and it's a big ass Roman numeral V for 4. But oh well.
Hey, it works. So, and it was funny because, I went back and I was listening to Eye for an Eye and Animosity and everything, and I'm listening to the new album. And the one sort of connective tissue there, aside from the COC sound, is I think with this new album, you guys are a little bit more raw, a little bit more live in the sound, especially comparative to the last album. I think a little bit, there's a real 70s vibe to it. But tell me about the album from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, we were listening to a lot of 70s heavy rock, and sitting there in the studio, while we were mixing the song Elfin, we kept referencing Paranoid by Black Sabbath, putting on the AB in it with Fairies Wear Boots. And, we didn't have the same type of studio, same type of tracks, same type of accoutrements, but we were mixing it analog. We kind of used the computer as a tape machine and didn't mess around with really all the software plugins and all the kind of nonsense there. We were, just using that as a very efficient tape machine and mixing it analog. And so, we did have that feel. And I think as far as capturing the sound, we really wanted to, one of the things we came away with from the self-title, which we were really proud of and we enjoyed making, was that for the next one, for this one, we wanted to document the sound of the band playing live. We wanted to really reflect more of our true identity live, and like, what is it like to stand in front of, Woody's full battle rig, guitar setup. And so we approached it like that. We made sure that we had all our gear there set up in the customary way. 'Cause, the other one, we just got on an airplane and flew to California and rummaged around the Foo Fighters warehouse until we found some potentially suitable backline and drums, and it wasn't really our stuff. And we rolled with it and we made it a good record, and we like it. But so for this one was all about, like, keeping it loose and keeping it real and organic and all that. So there we are. Some people might think it's sloppy. Some people might say, oh, it's too live, it's not polished. But it took a little bit of work to do it that way. To do it on a desk without any automation and just kind of do it the old-fashioned way a little bit. A first attempt at making records that hit us the same way the records that we heard when we were kids did.
And I believe you guys sort of have your own little studio now where you did this. If I'm correct, how has that impacted the writing and recording process? Because I think it'd be more relaxed and organic.
Yeah, I mean, it allows you. It could. There's a number of ways it could affect it. I mean, I think if we were different individuals, or maybe if we were younger or something, there's some people having the place at your disposal could affect you in a way where you're like, oh, okay, well, the clock's not really running now. We can take all the time in the world to fix, quote unquote, fix all this stuff and make everything perfect and just labor over a recording endlessly. And if you start to mix the writing into the recording, then you can just keep revising and trying different things endlessly and suck all the life out of it by just, laboring a point over and over. But we already kind of knew better than that, and we hear way too much of that in today's music. That's and a lot of it's done really not on the honest tip, by just repeating and doing it over and over. But it's done with the computer. So we wanted to avoid that. For us, it's just about getting in there and being able to experiment a little bit, and just feeling relaxed enough that we could try something brand new and actually get lightning in a bottle, actually document a new song, being born, something happening right then for the first time. And that's kind of how we attempted to use that luxury.
Right.
It's a nice space that used to have some pretty fancy stuff in there, and like a lot of recording studios that went out of business. And a friend of ours had kind of taken it over and we teamed up with him to help pay the rent, and we've been bringing a few other projects in there. A band called Sour Vein. It's going to do a record there.
Nice.
Kind of a sludge doom kind of band from North Carolina. You'll probably be hearing more about soon. Good thing, man.
Yeah, and, sort of speaking of that spontaneity, I understand the recording of this record was a little frenetic and hectic anyway, with the other projects sort of circling around and pushing you to a deadline. Did that sort of liven that up when you got in the studio to make some of those moments spark?
Yeah. I mean, that could you can either let that elevate you by being fresh, or you can let it sink you by by getting worried. But I think it did give us a little kick in the ass. But it also to go and take off, and Reed went to California to work on Teenage Time Killers thing at Dave Grohl's place, and he had all these amazing musicians like Greg Anderson from Sun and Max Cavalera from Sepultura, formerly of Sepultura, people like that, Randy Blythe, and I went out on the road with a band called Vistacino, which is all the guys from Caius.
Right.
Except for a couple of them, and so we've just come back real refreshed with good perspective, instead of staying right there with your face buried in the project. You get out in the world and do something different. So
right,
it fell together pretty well.
Yeah, and it turned out fantastic on the album. And we don't have time to talk about all the songs on the record, obviously, but I'd love to get the backstory on two of my favorites, Denmark Vesey and Tarquinius Superbus.
Oh, shoot, you should call Reed Mullen. These are almost fully formed compositions that Reed, came to the process with. And I'd say Tarquinius Superbus is the only song that's not just like brand new material. I recognize riffs in there from a long time ago from songs that just didn't quite flesh out. And that was kind of weird at first, but then we're like, this is the case where everything old is kind of new again, and it kind of has it's kind of a journey. It has a thrash metal start and all the great accents and breakdowns, and then it kind of has the Sabbath outro, so it's pretty rad. But just topically, if you go on a long plane flight with Reed Mullen, he's going to be browsing at historical trivia books,
Nice.
Not like super in-depth, but historical trivia books. And so I think this has to be born out of that because Tarquinius Superbus was the last, worst, most corrupt king of Rome. Not even an elected emperor, but a king type of tyrant. And he was a real jerk, and he had a real hard fall. And so for some reason, that's the story that Reed thought was compelling. I mean, I think it is. It's entertaining. And there's always modern parallels to that type of hubris in the corporate and political world, I'm sure. But also, then the other song, Denmark Vesey, he was the black freeman leader of a slave rebellion around the early 1840s in Charleston, South Carolina, and this nearly could have pulled it off and really changed the history of South Carolina, and freed, human beings that were basically held for labor and sold as property. They nearly pulled it off, and it shook those people up so much that that was actually responsible for the founding of the Citadel, the military college. So there's kind of hopefully there's people who have brought honor to that institution since, but the basis for that institution is born of the fact that the human beings that we hold as property outnumber us, so we need to form like a military institution to educate everyone how to prevent this type of thing from ever happening. So
wow.
It's kind of a dark history of the old Citadel, but whatever. Times change, fortunately.
Yes. Now, as always, you guys worked with John Custer. What is it about that connection that works so well for you guys?
I mean, it tends to be a little different on different projects, but I think the overall reason is we need a perspective slightly outside of the band who can say something, tough or negative, like outside of the dynamic of the band, if that needs to happen. I see that needing to happen less and less. But basically, it's someone with a good perspective and really good ears, extremely good musical chops in terms of theory. So, we're playing guitar solos, we're coming up with some ideas, and he can just be, Woody, you know that thing you do? Woody can see, yeah. He's like, well, just why don't you move that up? Why don't you move that up 3 positions, and then it'll be a harmony and an inversion. And Woody be, oh, so he kind of knows how to play Weatherman like a jukebox, without telling him precisely what to play. Woody's got the personality. He can kind of direct what Woody's doing into other realms. It's especially good. There's 2 kinds of solos on the record. There's the kind that's Woody right off the cuff, super bluesy, a little bit Iommi, super crazy bends. And then there's the kind of slightly more composed ones where it's a little bit of Custer chiming in. And, he used to do that. He used to do that times, too, with Pepper and Woody on some of the other stuff. But all in all, the major thing is quality control. And he makes a lot fewer suggestions these days. But when he does, and he can be silent for a while, but when he speaks up, it's always super on point. So it's real easy to work with him. It's fun. He lets me engineer some. He's a guy that's kind of, as he said before, he likes to fly the spaceship. He doesn't necessarily want to build the spaceship. So working with an engineer is a cool thing with him, even though he doesn't need to. So it's fun, and that keeps my mind off the pressing artistic anxiety nonsense. I have something tangible to do.
You can just let it flow. So now you guys are going to be kicking off the new tour in Australia, then back to the States for a West Coast run, I believe, in August. Any details you can share yet?
Well, yeah, we're off to New Zealand. We're off to Australia. We're definitely going to start on the West Coast. You're probably about 24 hours early for me to be able to discuss the bill and the package that we have planned. Let's just say that we have a lineup that we're super excited about. It's going to be insane, but yeah, we're going to start out west, loop around Western Canada, United States, Texas, the whole bit. Then we'll start again on the East Coast, on and on, Europe, ad nauseum.
So, how many tracks off the new album can fans expect to hear on this run?
Something like 3 right now. It's a big. It turns into like a big scuffle among the band. Like, what songs do you play? Because when you've been playing for almost 3 decades, essentially, even ruling out songs that you don't want to do because Pepper sings them, out of respect if he's not with the band at the moment, it still leaves a lot of potential material to play. So we have to duke it out. So it's to be determined. My guess is I can think of 3 that I can I'm always the one that's lobbying for new stuff. So I can think of 3 I can definitely sell. Beyond that, it might take some serious negotiations.
I would guess creating a set list with the depth of work you guys have is almost more difficult than recording an album. So.
Oh yeah. Because with recording an album, you have your new songs, and you're gonna have 15, and 3 or 4 or 5 of them might not make it, but that's pretty obvious. But yeah, when you have like dozens and dozens and dozens of titles and everybody has an agenda, yeah, it's brutal. That's why when we kind of come up with something, we tend to stick to it a little bit because we just don't want to repeat the fighting.
Gotcha.
But I think we should do like Clutch, where each member gets to they alternate and pick their set list every couple nights.
That sounds pretty cool. Be cool for the fans and everything. All right, so our last question before we get out of here, the pointless question of the week. Since you were talking about Reed's love of history and history books, what's your all-time favorite book or author? What would we find you reading?
That's a tough one in terms of all-time favorites because I don't really have an overarching sort of thing going on. I like kind of corny stuff. I mean, actually, I read a lot of a lot of technical manuals for the accoutrements for recording I have, to be honest. But recently that Keith Richards ghostwritten book, Life, was kind of hard to put down, or it was like when I put it down, I was sad that it was over. Yeah, Harper Lee, To Kill a Mockingbird, if you want to get kind of into corny 20th century type of mainstream literature. When I was a teenager, stuff by Robert Anton Wilson, like the Illuminati trilogy, used to get girls, smart girls, to talk to me. I'm like, it's kind of embarrassing. Not like a big fiction reader, and I sort of feel like I should be, and I try, and kind of a victim of a short attention span. I can pull off some pretty good. I can talk like I'm sort of well read, well spoken or something, but it's, I wish I really was. Gonna have to gonna have to try to make that happen in my old age.
Awesome. Mike Dean, Corrosion of Conformity, the new album 9-1X out on June 24th, Candlelight Records. Thank you so much for taking the time. We look forward to seeing you on the road.
Right on, right on. Thank you very much.
Take care, brother.